What's up, y'all? Back here just to give a quick recap of the last week of college basketball as we are only 8 days away from the first conference tournament starting on the second, and then a bunch of them start on the fourth. So conference tournament season right around the corner. So getting closer and closer to the tournament each coming week. But on Saturday they revealed the top 16. So just thought we'd share a little bit about that and how kind of accurate I almost was 3 weeks ago. Looking at it quickly, you can see that Michigan was the number one overall seed, but Duke took them down, so I assume Duke is probably going to be above them now. But you had Arizona, Iowa State. Interesting to have Iowa State over Houston and UConn. So I think that Creighton loss earlier in the week probably hurt UConn. But if you look at mine, this top 16 you have here, the same top 16 there, just different seeding orders for a couple of these different teams here. Like having Michigan State on the 4 line, I have them on the 3 line. Same thing with Purdue being on the 3 line. For me, they have them on the 2 line. Gonzaga, they have on the 3 line. Nebraska being in the 3 line. Gonzaga is interesting to me. They still have to play St. Mary's next Saturday, so that will be interesting to see what they can do there. They just play in such a weak conference that, I don't think they should be rewarded for that. I know they play a pretty hefty out-of-conference schedule, but they didn't, shock the world with their out-of-conference schedule wins this year. Whether that was just the teams they played just happened to be not as good, or there's that game against Michigan where they lost by 40 in Vegas. That was supposed to be a championship game, so pretty crazy there. I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary, kind of the teams we've been talking about all year. JT Toppin injury, I thought, could play effect into the Texas Tech seedings, but doesn't seem like it will as of right now. You got to see a couple games without him first, I guess, really. But nothing too crazy there. But looking at the teams that had the best weeks, you had Cincinnati taking down Utah, and a huge win at Kansas where they kind of just blew them out in the last 10 minutes of that game, just kind of dominated them. These 2 wins kind of put them back on the bubble. They've won 4 straight now. They're inching closer and closer towards the bubble. I still think they're probably on the wrong side, but they have chances upcoming to continue to improve their resume. They play at Texas Tech this week, which could be a huge game now that Tech's missing Toppin. Big time chance for them to get a big time win there. Play Oklahoma State. It's a game you have to win. You can't drop that game. And then or Arizona, put them up here because they lost 2 last week, and then bounce back with 2 big time wins, beating BYU. I know they're down Rishi Saunders now, but they're still a very good team. And then beating Houston, which was really surprising. They kind of took it to Houston and matched the physicality in that game, which was not really going to expect that from Arizona to be able to match Houston's physicality, because every year they're probably one of the most physical teams in the country. So it was really interesting to see that. They didn't really give up any sort of lead too often to Houston in that second half, kind of controlled really the second half of that game. They get Baylor this week and Kansas. The Kansas game should be interesting to see, all the drama and bullshit that's going on with Aaron Peterson. So we'll see what happens there. Then next up, I want to highlight Virginia. They've won 8 in a row. They're on that projected 4 seed line. They beat Georgia Tech, and then they beat Miami this week at home, which was a great game on Saturday. There was just phenomenal games all around on Saturday. And then they play NC State and Duke this week, so 2 of the better teams in the ACC here. So this can really kind of put Virginia more to the test and under the microscope. And then Georgia, who I talked about, that was really struggling. They come away with 2 big-time wins. They went at Kentucky, which was huge, and then beat Texas at home. Another game where they just kind of controlled the whole game. So now Georgia, with these 2 weeks, 2 wins there, I think they're kind of on the right side of the bubble right now. Probably projected around that 10, 11 seed. I still don't see them all the way safe, but they're on the right side for now. Just got to keep winning. They got a big-time chance to prove themselves at Vanderbilt later this week. Then we got Duke. Put them here just because that win over Michigan was really big. I was at that game in DC. That was awesome. The atmosphere at that game felt like a Final Four game. Both fan bases really showed out. It got really loud at certain points in that game. It was just a really awesome atmosphere to be in. Over 20,000 people in that stadium. So really, really cool experience to be a part of there. And then Duke this week, they get Notre Dame and Virginia. So Duke probably going to come in as the number 1 team in the country on Monday. And then they get a big game against Virginia, which will be another game to really kind of prove themselves that they can continue to kind of play this really good defense that they have been over the course of the season. And then we get USC for one of the worst weeks probably. They lost versus Illinois. All right, not too bad of a loss. Illinois is a really good team, but then they lose at home to Oregon, which really, really hurts their resume. So they have their third straight loss. Now are 7-9 in the Big Ten, placing them in 11th place. This doesn't destroy their season completely out of it. They'll have some chances. They play at UCLA and against Nebraska upcoming, but this really just kind of hurts them. They'll be on the wrong side of the bubble. They really need to pick up both these wins this week to get back on the right side. So big time week for USC. Then we get West Virginia, who lost against Utah. Terrible, terrible loss this week. And then they lose at TC. This pretty much kind of wraps up their season for West Virginia. I think they're pretty much done. I don't see really a way they can get in unless they somehow win out, which is very, very unlikely. They now fall to 16-11 on the season. They just don't have as many. I know they beat Kansas, but they just don't have as many marquee wins as some of these other bubble teams up here as well. Then you get San Diego State. They just lost this week to Grand Canyon and Colorado State. They play Utah State and New Mexico this week. Chance to kind of make up for these losses, but their at-large chances are pretty much shot at this point. They kind of have to probably win the Mountain West tournament to get in. I know they're only a game back right now. They're tied actually with New Mexico, a game back of Utah State. So winning one of these games would have been really big for them to kind of catch Utah State, especially when they get them at home. It's going to be a big time game for San Diego State this week. Both these games really just to stay atop of the Mountain West. Maybe VCU lost to St. Louis at home this week. Another team where their at-large bids probably is kind of chalked now with this loss. Kind of not ruin their season, but ruin any really at-large chance. They play Fordham and George Mason next. Don't you think these wins are going to be the ones that, really bring out the eyes like these other power teams? They get chances to play these top teams. GCU just doesn't get those in the A-10. They got swept by St. Louis this season, so that really just hurts them. They'll probably have to win the A-10 to have really any chance of getting into the tournament now. And the last team here we have is Kentucky. They lost at Georgia and Auburn this week. And Auburn game was definitely one that they could have came out and won, but kind of choked it at the end a little bit. I mean, both these teams were choking back and forth, so it was kind of bad on both sides. They're still safely in the tournament for right now, probably around that 7-8 seed line, but not really two good losses to have as you're trying to play your best basketball as you get closer to March. They play South Carolina, which is probably a get-right game for them, and then they play Vandy, which would be big. They're now 8-6 in the SEC, which drops them down to 9th, so you don't really want to play in that 8-9 because you'll end up having to play the 1 seed most likely, and you don't really afford any bye if you're past the 8 seed line, so they got to try to be able to move their way up a little bit here towards the end of the year. But those were kind of the teams that were doing hot this week, and some of the teams that kind of blew their shot at March are just coming down a little bit, not playing their best basketball as we're getting towards March. And then quickly just highlight some of the games that we'll look at this week that really catch the eye. We got Louisville UNC. How does UNC play without Caleb Wilson at home against one of the better teams in the ACC? Then we have Houston at Kansas. Houston lost 2 straight last week. We'll see if they can kind of rebound here and play in Allen Fieldhouse, which is not easy to play. So Big 12 basketball Monday night continues to deliver with these 9 o'clock games. So we're going to have a 3rd straight week of hopefully another great game on Monday night. All right, and then on Tuesday, we get NC State, Virginia. Should be a good battle in the ACC. We get Cincinnati, Texas Tech, kind of talked about before. Cincinnati, you can see if they can steal a big-time win with the JT Toppin injury for Tech to try to continue to keep their tournament hopes alive. Then we get Tennessee at Missouri, which would be a good battle in the SEC for, double for bye purposes for the conference tournament. You get UCF at BYU. UCF still trying to stay away from the bubble and get into their tournament. BYU still trying to figure out things without Richie Saunders, even though they did beat Iowa State on Saturday. So they've started to figure out some things, which is really just get AJ DeBonta the ball and let him do his thing. And then we get USC at UCLA. UCLA had a crazy, crazy win against Illinois Saturday night at the buzzer by Donovan Dent in overtime. Awesome, awesome game. And USC really needs to win this one. So big time game here happening in the Big Ten. And then we get on Wednesday, we get St. John's at UConn. UConn right now, I think a game back or half a game back of St. John's. So big time game to see who can kind of capture that Big East title. We get Florida at Texas. Texas still trying to play themselves off the bubble. And then we get to see Florida, probably one of the hottest power teams in the country right now. Let's see how they play in their next game. We get Georgia at Vanderbilt. Georgia continuing to try to stay off the bubble. Vandy trying to continue to stay in that top 4 for the double bye in the SEC. So big time game there in Nashville. We get A&M at Arkansas. Arkansas has been very, very fun to watch this year. So anytime they're playing, they're almost must-watch TV. And they get to play A&M, who's still trying to play their way into the tournament just a little bit. I think they're probably in that 8 seed range. Then we get Ohio State at Iowa. Iowa just lost to Wisconsin just probably about an hour ago. So they looking to rebound against Ohio State. And Ohio State also lost to Michigan State probably a couple hours ago. So both these teams looking for a big-time rebound game win. And then on Thursday, we get Michigan State at Purdue. Big-time matchup here in the Big Ten. This can be possibly a Big Ten championship game, so this is going to be a great one here in West Lafayette. Then we get Michigan at Illinois. We're going to see how both these teams respond after taking some not bad L's, but some hurtful losses. Both lost in games they probably could have won. Michigan against Duke on Saturday and Illinois against UCLA. So let's see which of these teams can really rebound and not start a losing streak here on Friday night. And then looking at the mid-majors on Tuesday, there wasn't really any great games on Monday. So on Tuesday, we get St. Louis at Dayton. We'll see if Dayton can pull the upset here. I just think they have the talent on the team. They just haven't been able to put it together. But we'll see. St. Louis might just roll them. But it's always good to watch for these mid-major teams to see how they play when they play against good talent. And then we get New Mexico at Nevada, the big-time game in the Mountain West for seeding. New Mexico tied for second with San Diego State. Nevada in fourth here. So win here, they could just pull within a game of New Mexico. So big-time game happening there. And then on Wednesday, we have George Mason versus St. Joe's. Just a A-10 battle that both these teams been playing pretty solid throughout the A-10 schedule. So it should be a fun watch there. Then we get Central Arkansas versus Austin Peay. Austin Peay has been red hot in the ASUN. If they win this game here against Central Arkansas, they will have clinched the ASUN regular season. So big time game happening there. Then we get Santa Clara at St. Mary's. Both these teams, I think, are just a game back or half a game back Gonzaga. So going to be a big game there. West Coast for the West Coast Conference. St. Mary's also still has to play Gonzaga on Saturday, so they got a big time week to really prove themselves to the committee this week. And then, as I talked about a little bit before, we get Utah State at San Diego State to see possibly for first place in the Mountain West here. So it's going to be a big time game for the Aztecs, especially after those two losses. And Utah State taking a loss against Nevada on Saturday as well. So this should be a really fun Mountain West game to watch. So you got two 11 o'clock games on Wednesday that are going to be really, really fun to watch and really interesting for the committee. Hopefully the committee is watching these games if they're actually doing their job right, which, sometimes is a lot to ask for them because I feel like half the time they don't watch shit. But regardless of that, then on Thursday we get Tennessee State at Southeastern Missouri. SEMO. They just beat UT Martin last week. So these teams are basically playing now for first in the Ohio Valley. So this is going to be a big game for them to see who can get that, win the Ohio Valley regular season. And then another one I just want to highlight is in the Summit League. We get North Dakota State, who already clinched the regular season championship, but they're playing at St. Thomas, who has been really good as of late. They'll probably end up in second in the Summit, so this is probably a potential preview of the Summit League championship. So we want to get eyes on that to see which one of these teams can pull it out to win the Summit League. And then the 2 games here on Thursday, we get Hawaii versus UC Davis, and then UC Irvine versus CSUN, which is Cal State Northridge. All these teams are pretty much within a game to a game and a half of each other in the Big West. So this is going to be a big time. Hawaii, UC Irvine, and Cal State Northridge are all tied for first, and UC Davis, I think, is a game back. So these 2 games will have a lot of implications into what's going to happen for seeding for the conference tournament in the Big West and who wins the Big West regular season, really, as well. And then on Friday night, we get Akron at Kent State. Akron, honestly, might be the best team in the MAC. They have 1 loss, and it's at 2 at Miami, Ohio. So that's going to be interesting to see. So if you got time on Friday, this is going to be a great game to watch. Akron at Kent State. Kent State's home atmosphere is actually usually pretty good, especially for the MAC. They're a lot of fun to watch. Both these teams are 2nd and 3rd in the MAC right now. Kent State probably won't catch Akron. But, I mean, if Akron wants to somehow maybe catch Miami, Ohio, if they lose one here down the stretch, they got to win a game like this. So it should be interesting. Then we get App State at Texas State, as I continue to talk about how just insane the Sunbelt is. Maybe it's just the nerd in me for college basketball, but the Sunbelt has been absolutely just a wild, wild conference. App State's looking to try to lock up that 1 seed with a win here. This is the last day of the regular season in the Sunbelt, so it's going to be a bunch of Sunbelt teams playing on Friday night, and seeding will change from all those games. So it's going to be kind of a weird Friday night to finally get that final bracket in the Sunbelt. But looking at it right here, as you can see, App State's 11-6. You got Troy at 10-6, Marshall at 10-6, South Alabama at 10-6, Texas State at 10-7, Arkansas State at 9-7, Coastal Carolina at 9-7, Southern Miss at 8-8, and then JMU at 8-8. So it's kind of absolutely wild, just all these teams' records. I know it's mad tiny here. Probably should have did a different page to show it off, but we're just gonna live with it. It's, if you know the West Coast and how it's set up, that conference where basically the 1 and 2 seeds get buys all the way into the semifinals. This is pretty much the same thing. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buys from, if you're the 1 and 2s, all the way to the semis. And for a conference like this, it makes 0 fucking sense why they did it. No idea why it's like that. It literally makes no sense. All these teams are so close in record, in talent gap. Like the talent gap is so minuscule that like allowing a team like App State to get that many buys is ridiculous when Texas State is just as good. Coastal Carolina is probably just as good. JMU has been hot down the stretch here. Won like 4 or 5 straight games, beating some of the top teams in the Sun Belt. Marshall's probably the best team in the Sun Belt. They should probably win the Sun Belt. But I mean, it's just been absurd season here, and just wanted to highlight it because each week you think it won't get it crazier, but it just continues to get crazier. And it's been a fun Sun Belt ride, and hopefully it will be a fun conference tournament. I hate the way it's set up. It sucks. Change it back. Regardless of that, that was my little spiel on the Sun Belt. But that's pretty much it for me. Just wanted to highlight a few things that happened around college basketball season. We're going to get closer to the conference tournaments. I will highlight those when those brackets start to come out, because the conference tournaments are like my Christmas. Everyone loves the March Madness. I think conference tournament season is probably my favorite part of the season. It's so much fun watching all these small schools play at noon, playing for their lives to try to get into the big dance, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. So that's pretty much it for me. We'll see if I come back with some sort of episode for the weekend games, but I'll decide it when it happens. We got a big snowstorm coming, so maybe I'll have the time to do it. But thanks for tuning in. Peace out, y'all.